Welcome, Algebra 2. This is section 4.7, the quadratic formula. The essential question is, what is the quadratic formula? How are you going to remember it? Let's begin. So if you have a quadratic equation in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then you can use something called the quadratic formula. And it's right here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This should be really big in your notes. I hope you can read it. Just circle it and put a cloud all around it and just write it huge. Alright, so is quadratic formula something you just gotta end up memorizing if you're going to use it? There's songs for that. We'll play songs in class. Anyways, here's an example of how to do this. So, first step, you want to put the equation in the correct form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So it's got to be equals 0. In my case, for this example, it's not. So I'm going to have to subtract 4 on both sides. When I do that, I'm going to get 0 over there. I'm going to get 2x squared minus x minus 4. Alright, check. Next step, I got to figure out what my a, b, and c is. A is the coefficient of the x squared, and that is going to be 2. B is the coefficient of the x term, which is going to be negative 1. And c is the number, which is negative 4. So, done. Next step is you have to substitute and simplify. So the quadratic formula is going to be x equals negative b, so negative 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 1 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. So there's a lot of simplifying here. So the first thing I like doing, okay, minus negative 1 becomes plus 1, so 1 plus or minus the square root. Negative 1 squared will be 1. And then 4 times 2 is 8, times negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, and then times another negative 4 will be plus 32. All over 2 times 2 is 4. And that simplifies to 1 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 4. You always try to simplify as much as you can. In this case, square root of 33 does not simplify any more than that, so that is my answer. 1 is plus or minus square root of 33 over 4, just like that. Alright. Now the question becomes, should I use the quadratic formula to solve? When do you actually use this? And for that, one thing, quadratic formula always works for any kind of quadratic equation. That's why it's nice, because you know it'll always work out. But sometimes factoring is easier. You can't factor everything. It only is for certain numbers, like this case. X squared plus 10x plus 24. That can be easier because you see it's x plus 4 times x plus 10 equals 0. So my solutions are x equals negative 4 and negative 10. That can be easier sometimes, but if you can't see that, it's good to just use the quadratic formula. Another thing, you can use completing the square that we learned in the last video, and that will always work too. But it gets weird when your b is an odd number. You just have to deal with fractions. But if you like using complete the square, go ahead and do that. I think using either the quadratic formula or complete the square is fine, and whatever you prefer and works out best for you, I don't have a preference. Other part of quadratic formula is we have this concept called the discriminant. The discriminant, where it is, it's the expression that's under the radical sign, so in the square root. So it's going to be b squared minus 4ac. That is going to be the discriminant. And this evaluates some number. What do you do with the discriminant? It actually tells you how many solutions you have. I said before that quadratic formula has 2 solutions. Well, it can have up to 2 real solutions. You might only have 1 solution, or you might have 0 real solutions. And here's the cases, and it all depends on the discriminant. If your discriminant ends up being positive, then you have 2 real solutions, and it might, if the graph of that might look like this. You got a parabola, and it'll cross 2 times. These are our 2 real solutions in this case. Now, when you evaluate the discriminant and equals 0, that means you have 1 real solution. This happens when the vertex of the parabola just touches the line once. So it only touches once of the vertex, and it doesn't cross over. So there's only 1 real solution. Now, if your discriminant is negative, that means you have 0 real solutions. So it looks like a parabola that might be above the line like this, or it could be below the line like this. It never actually crosses the x-axis, so it doesn't have any solutions. So those are your cases. Now, we'll talk later about, well, if you don't have real, you actually have imaginary solutions. But that's a later section. Let's try some examples. So pause the video. Alright, what is the number of real solutions of each equation? What is the number of real solutions? So we're not evaluating, we just want to find the number. So we're going to use the discriminant. That's going to be b squared minus 4ac. So in this case, your a equals 2, your b equals negative 3, and your c equals 7. So if I plug all those in, it's going to be b squared, so negative 3 squared, minus 4 times a times c. So that becomes 9 minus 4 times 2 is 8 times 7 is 56. And 9 minus 56 is going to be negative 47. Negative 47 is a negative number. And negative numbers have 0 real solutions. So your answer is 0 real solutions. Alright, try another one. What are the solutions? Pause the video. Alright, I'm going to solve this by quadratic formula here. Now you got to get in the right form, and you have to have equals 0. So that doesn't, our current form doesn't work, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. When I do that, I'm going to get x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. Alright, and what are my a, b, and c is going to be? A is going to be 1, because that's 1x squared. B is going to be 4, and c is going to be 4. So I'm going to plug that into the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So simplify that, I get negative 4 plus or minus square root of 16, 4 squared, minus 16 over 2. Well, 16 minus 16 is going to be 0. So that just becomes negative 4 plus or minus square root of 0 over 2. And square root of 0 is 0, so it's just negative 4 over 2. And so that's going to come out to just negative 2. So my answer is only one solution, x equals negative 2. And that kind of makes sense, because if I could have taken this example, I could have factored that. That actually, x squared plus 4x plus 4 is a perfect square trinomial. And that's x plus 2 squared equals 0. And if you square rooted each side, you would have got x plus 2 equals plus or minus 0, or just 0. And you subtract 2, and you get x equals 2, or negative 2. So either way, if you would have done completing the square or whatever, you would have got one solution, x equals negative 2. That's it.